Emily and I are here today to give you a preview of Gnome Hollow. This one is from the Op and Ammon Anderson, who I met 2 years ago now.
Really?
At Gamma. He had this game. No one had signed it yet.
Okay.
But everyone at Gamma was talking about it that night, and I know there were publishers after it. The Op got a hold of it, and it is now finally coming to market. We have a chance to give you a little bit of an idea of what's going on in this game. This is a mostly family weight game.
Yep.
There are some things you can do, some variants you can add to give it a little bit more, but this is a very straightforward tile laying game where people are going to be adding tiles to this garden, creating rings of mushrooms, collecting some of those mushrooms, maybe taking those mushrooms to the market and selling them.
Yeah, and let's talk about we're gnomes.
Yeah,
we
are gnomes,
right? And we're just we're creating these little rings of mushrooms, and we are collecting mushrooms to then sell for little trinkets.
Yes, it's not
the
just
market.
points. These are not just points. You're getting all these treasures. 10 points are a key, 5 points are a crystal. It's a very adorable game. And in terms of being extra adorable, the art is also partly done by the designer himself.
Which is crazy, yeah.
Which is really cool. But we're going to tell you about what you're doing in the game. We've got the game set up here in its end state, but that's no problem. We'll be able to tell you what it does. On your turn, you're going to just take 2 of the tiles from the garden board here. And there's a variety of different tiles, but you'll get used to seeing some very familiar ones and some patterns. And you know, you really want this one type, but it's not out there, that sort of thing. You're going to take 2 of those and add them to the main garden. The main garden is going to start with this big stump piece, and that counts as a tile in terms of creating rings. You're going to add 2 to that, and there's some placement rules. Everything has to line up. So a ring of mushrooms has to connect to a ring of mushrooms or a line. The green sides have to line up with the green sides. So you do have to kind of work with what you have out here to get it to fit. Why are you doing this? Well, ultimately, you want to create rings. But when you place the tiles, once you've done that, you're going to take one of your gnomes, and you have 2 gnomes, and they start off the board completely. You're going to take one of them and place them somewhere. You can place them in a few different ways.
Yes. Mine were Holly and Poppy.
Oh, Holly and Poppy. Oh, I had Betty and Beatrix. I didn't even know. I didn't even see the names.
Is that why you were not naming them? And I kept saying Holly's going here and Poppy's going here, and you kept looking at me like I was.
That must be. That must be the case. But yes, we have these adorable little gnomes. We're going to place them in a few different ways. One of the places, and I think what you'll see very early on in the game, is people can place them on an unfinished ring. So if, say, I put a couple tiles out and it's just like a tile or 2 shy of being completely enclosed, I could put one of my gnomes on that ring and then hopefully in the future complete it in order to make one of my ring markers move from one of these spots across my player board down here where I'm going to get some bonuses, which is part of the game. It's got some of those Euro mechanics of like moving things around your player board, adding things to the top of your player board, kind of not really a set collection, but collecting as many flowers as you can to score points. But when you place out there, you're going to basically say, this is as long as I'm standing here, this is going to be mine when it's completed, when it's, when people are collecting the mushrooms.
And the nice thing is, too, that if you've done that, I can't get in your way now.
Yeah, you can, but you have to ask for my permission.
I have to ask for your permission to add anything that's going to add to that specific ring. So if it's going to make it harder for you to finish, you'll probably say, no, Emily.
Right.
You cannot add that there. You can add something nicer if you'd like.
Yeah, so
but it really only benefit you since you own the ring.
100%. Long story short, no one's going to be trying to ask for permission, generally speaking. I guess there are some edge cases where you might want to do that because it might help you complete a ring, but that's going to be a very maybe rare occasion, at least in a 2-player game.
For sure. And some of the things you can get when you complete those too, those bonuses you were talking along the bottom, there's these signposts that you're going to be able to put out. These signposts give you extra mushrooms, which is great. And they also are able to have sometimes exchanges with them, right?
Yeah, that's the variant we played with, sort of an exchange board that allowed you to also do a little extra trading when you visited a signpost.
Which is nice.
Yeah, the signposts are really cool because as those come out, those become yet another location that you could move your gnome to after you've taken and placed your 2 tiles. So you can place it on a ring, an unfinished ring. You can place it on a finished ring, and if there are mushrooms there, because mushrooms might accumulate there if someone completed the ring and no one was on it, you could take those mushrooms. But you could also go to a signpost collecting those goods.
The last thing you can do is you can also just go and get some flowers, right? Those are the flower pots you're getting across the top. There's ways to get them as you complete rings. And as you complete more and more of them will become available for them to be on the market and for you to get these little wild tokens. So these wildflowers are great because they give you this wild token where it has paths along every edge and it's also green along every edge, which means it can go anywhere.
Yes, the rulebook says so. This can go anywhere. It can really help you complete things when you're in a sticky situation, or really just kind of give you some flexibility for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, but you're going to go there to get flowers. You can also, it wasn't the last place, you can also go to the Pinwheel Market, which is the stump in the middle, and that lets you interact with the bottom part of this board, which is where you're able to trade some mushrooms for some points. If you don't do this, you won't score many points at the end of the game. Mushrooms are worth nothing at the end of the game, so you have to go here periodically anyway, throughout the game in order to trade mushrooms. The interesting thing here is you can make up to 2 trades. If you do 2 trades, they have to be colors. 2 different colored mushrooms. And then there's different varieties here. So if I traded 5 red, I get 4 points. But when you do that, you have to cover that up. So now no one else for the rest of the game can trade in 5 for 4. They have to do it at a different rate. They can go higher, up to 8, or maybe a lower. And then there's this first column that will always be uncovered, that you can always trade pairs of colored mushrooms for very low points. But again, that's all limited to 2 trades. So that is really about making the most of your visits there. You don't want to go there and trade a pair and trade a pair. That's not going to get you a lot of points. But if you can collect a bunch of mushrooms and then go there and trade them in, that's the best thing to do. However,
someone might beat you to it.
Everyone else is doing that. So you want to look around the table and go, oh, we're in a race for the most purple
All of us
mushrooms.
have a bunch of purples, and I want to make sure at least I get some points for it and not like they took this, and they took that. Now all I can do is pairs for 3 points each.
Right. And you're going to keep doing this around the table, taking 2 tiles, placing them, resolving some of those things where you're getting mushrooms or completing rings, and then moving one of your gnomes. You don't have to move your gnome, but in order to do one of those actions, you're going to want to move your gnomes to do a thing. And you keep doing that until one of 3 different things happens.
So we can either run out of tiles from the bag,
which I think is going to be rare, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe we're at higher player counts.
Maybe.
And if you're not able to get those rings done, otherwise you're looking for someone to finish moving all of their rings down below. So they need to get 8 of them. Or if someone does the whole set and gets all 8 of the flowers. So if they get all of the wildflowers, that's going to be 25 points at the end. It's also a marker of the end game. Yeah,
I actually think that the most likely trigger will probably be the ring markers.
Yeah.
Because what's interesting about the flowers is each player is going to uncover some of the wildflower tiles throughout the game that aren't accessible at first. They're not all up here to begin with. They're all off to the side. And when you hit one of these markers at 3, 10, and 18 points, your 2nd, your 4th, and your 6th ring marker, you actually take one of those wild tiles, take the corresponding flower, and put the rest of the flowers up at the top of the board, allowing the other players to get those with some of the other bonuses. So if Emily's looking for her last flower, I might just be the one who puts it up there for her to take on her next turn.
Yep, or like you didn't do your last one until your very, very last turn.
Yeah.
So I never had a chance to get that flower.
Exactly, and then you just add up the points. The points are going to be what you've collected during the game, and then those 2 tracks at the top. You're going to get the same number of points depending on whether you've moved your ring markers or collected the flowers. Person with the most points wins.
I can't believe you haven't mentioned this yet, though. So the one thing that I can't believe you haven't mentioned yet, David, that as you're moving these markers, it's not double layer.
I haven't.
Right? But what is special about these boards?
Look how much I'm balancing this. They're not dual layered boards, but
He's a magician.
Are magnetic. That is a nice touch. You're right. I can't believe I've mentioned that. I'm a big fan of magnets around here, and this is one of the cooler uses. I'm a big fan of dual layer player boards too.
You are.
But this is pretty slick because you just pop them down and they're right there. Now, I don't know. I assume that's going to be in every copy of the game. It may just be our prototype. It may be some sort of deluxe version of the game. I'm not sure. I'll put some text on here below if I find out the answer to that. But yeah, that is a very cool feature. It is a very adorable game. We've got some really nice wooden signs as well.
Yeah.
The gnomes are wooden. It's a really, really pretty game. It's very, I would say this is lightweight, but you know, a little bit. There's not really a lot of puzzles to solve like there are in some tile laying
There's not
games.
a lot of tension against other players.
No,
as
there's
much
not a
as
lot
it
of
is Just
tension.
like you wanting to get the stuff done that you're setting out to do.
Right, and being as efficient as you can in doing so, not only with what you're doing here with the tiles, but also when you go here to the market for sure.
Yep.
But that is Gnome Hollow. If you have any questions about it, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and answer whatever we can. Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.